So after you have the wheels assembled on the trike so it's kind of stable, if you're going to be assembling the rear parent steer kit, then we'll do that next. And if you're not, you can just skip this portion of the bracket and assemble the basket onto the bike like we'll do during this video. But before we put this bracket onto the trike, there's a couple things that are easier to do before we assemble all the things in this area. And the first one is right here on the pedal levelers. You're going to want to put this post in first. I've already assembled it here. It's 13 millimeters and a lot of people don't have that wrench. You can use an adjustable wrench, but simply use your wrench here and tighten it down, and the cord won't be attached yet, but just tighten that down all the way. It goes in very easily and you'll be done with that. The next thing you can do is you'll have something that attaches to both sides and next to the wheel. On this side you've got your loading brake. In this case I've already assembled it. You can do it after the rear steer kit is assembled, it doesn't matter, but sometimes it's easier to get it out of the way, and that'll be later in the video. But the other thing that we want to do is attach the rear disc brake caliper onto the bike before we put the basket and the rear steer kit on, because it's just easier to get at. So this is how it will come, and you'll unscrew these two bolts like so, and you'll actually notice that they aren't exactly the same length. And the reason for that is because when they're assembled in here, the one that goes here will bottom out or top out against the bracket here, whereas this one can keep tightening all the way through. So the shorter of the two you'll want to put on this side. Now when you assemble this, it's going to go on like so, and the colors of your caliper might vary a little bit from this. There's a couple different types, but they all go on the same. So you're going to have some adjustment points and bolts and things that you'll put towards the center of the bike, and will fit down over the disc brake like so, and you'll have the two bolt holes to go against the bracket down below. Now remember, you'll have two different size bolts, so you want to put the shorter one in back towards the rear of the bike and just start it with one or two threads so that you can get the other one started. And these are kind of difficult to start often. Once you get them a couple threads in, you're going to take a 5 millimeter Allen wrench and you're going to tighten those from below and alternate back and forth every couple of turns. Now a lot of people like to tip the trike up so they have better access to this, or you can just do it from below like this. Once you get it all the way tightened back and forth, this caliper will be in place and you're done with that. So the next step to put the rear steer kit on, we're actually going to assemble this U-frame bracket, and it's going to go in here. But the first thing we need to do is to remove this silver plate, and when you do, there are two bolts, and each one will have 3 washers with the bolt. So you're going to take that off and set it aside for later. And then we're going to tip the bike on the side so I can show you a couple things. And a lot of people like to do all these steps I'm going to show you while it's tipped on its side, just for easy access. So we're going to roll it forward a little. Tip it on its side. And what I want to show you is that this bracket will come in here and fit into these two holes on the bottom like so, but it also has to be bolted through 2 holes on the top. So in order to fit it in here and to make sure that everything is kind of loose enough to get it tightened, what I suggest is to loosen these 2 bolts right here on the black plate, and I'll do that real quick. You only have to loosen it just a little bit to get them started. And when you do that, now the black plate will have a lot of freedom to move around. So what I suggest is to get that loose, and then we're going to fit this in here, start the 2 bolts on the bottom, and then start working on the top. Next step, we're going to put the bracket in, so you'll fit it in below the black plate, and just in like so. You'll use 2 of the bolts from the pack that have the blue Loctite on the threads, and 1 washer. So we'll start those and get them just going in. And only do 1 to 2 threads, just barely get them started, because you want to make sure that you have enough play on the top side when you put all the other bolts into this assembly. So now I've flipped the bike over to do the top side, and when you do this, you're actually going to put the basket on, and you'll have a stack up of the bracket, the black plate, the basket, and then this bar that we removed earlier, and you'll put bolts back down through all of that. So because that all stacks up, what I suggest to do first is to take your 1 Phillips bolt and put it through one of the 2 holes in this slot in the basket, simply so that you don't get the basket too far out of position one way or the other while you're assembling the rest of it, and then have to come back later and redo it. So I've put that in, I've just done it loose so that the basket can still move around. Now I'm going to take these 2 bolts that we removed earlier, start with 1, and what I've found is to take 2 washers off from the bolt, so you have 1 on top, and I found this fits the best. Put 2 washers underneath, and then you're going to fit that down through, and this takes some effort, so be very patient. Get it started. Once you get it started, then you can do the same thing with the other bolt. Take 2 washers off. You should have just enough play in the silver plate. Put the 2 washers underneath, and then you'll have enough play still in this bracket because you left everything loose to get that last bolt started. And then we'll go tighten all 4 of those down and come back and tighten the Phillips bolt last. So the last step in tightening up the rear steer bar is that you're going to tighten the 4 bolts holding it and a couple of other bolts. So we're going to start with the 2 on top, and you want to make sure that this plate is all the way, this bar is all the way across both sides, kind of equal distant, to make sure you're covering kind of the outside portion. You don't want it kind of crooked like that, because then you're not covering all the bars. So you'll tighten that down once you have it in place. You can go ahead and tighten this bolt holding the basket on. Use a Phillips screwdriver to do that. And once you have those done, you're going to flip it around to the bottom again, and you're going to tighten up the first 2 bolts that we put in to the bar, to the rear steer assembly. And then don't forget these 2 bolts on the black plate that we loosened to make the plate flexible. And once you've done all 7 of those, you're good to go, and the rear steer assembly is tight. Alright, so next we're going to put the steering arm on and to the rear steer kit. And in this case, we're looking at a 1420 XL, and that's why you see 2 pieces to the rear steer bar. On the 16 and the 1420, you'll see just a single bar. And so there's one extra step here we'll go over. If you're doing one of the other bikes, you don't need to do this step. So first, you'll see the 2 pieces here. We're going to look at them. They have 2 holes, so we'll insert them together. And then once they're together, we have 2 bolts and 2 nuts that go together. And so we'll insert those from above. Make sure they're aligned.
And then these nuts are really small compared to everything else on the bike, so it may be easiest just to use your 3mm Allen wrench on the bolt and your adjustable wrench on the bottom. And we'll tighten those up. Okay, so next we're going to put this kind of triangle silver control arm piece here, the support bracket. And instead of attaching it to the trike right away, we're going to use this one bolt here. And at the back of the control arm, you should see a bolt hole. So we're going to take that and insert it in. It should be really easy to start by hand and get it pretty much all the way tight by hand. If need be, you can use the Allen wrench. It's 5mm again. You just want to get it snug. It doesn't have to be very tight. And the next thing, we're going to insert the back end of the control arm, the steering arm, into the back knuckle of the bike. And the easiest way to do this is to tip it up on its side or all the way over. So here's the knuckle we're going to do. I'm going to take this end and I'm going to feed it in, and you want to be very careful when you do this because the metals are very soft. But I'm going to start turning it clockwise, and I just got it in there. It should go very easy, so if you feel any tightness, take it back out and try again. So I'm going to tighten it all the way down, and then probably have to back off a little bit in order to line it up. So next step, I'm going to flip the bike back right side up. Make sure the control steering arm goes underneath the pedal. And then on the front end, I'm going to bring around this knuckle and slide it right onto its joint. Then I'm going to take this finger bolt and put it in, and this should go in very easy as well. So if you feel any tightness, stop, back it out and try again. You don't want to cross thread this. So last step on the steering control arm is to attach these two bolts with the blue Loctite and two washers, and they're going to go into that chrome triangle control bracket, and it's easiest to do that upside down, or at least on its side. And you'll see it kind of dangling there. So I'm going to spin this around, and it should pretty well fit right in there. I'm going to take the two bolts, and it's a 5mm Allen wrench again. And get it started. Take your other bolt. Also get it started. And then I just hold this control bracket kind of in place, and I tighten both down. And once you're done with that, you're done with the control arm.